I need you to stop what you're doing right now and listen very carefully. What I'm about to tell you will forever change the way you think about shopping malls, stores, and the people who work there. These are not made-up stories. These are real experiences from real people who were just doing their jobs or running errands when something went horribly, terribly wrong. And by the end of this video, you will understand why some retail workers refuse to work alone and why some shoppers never go out after dark anymore. Every single day, millions of people walk into stores. They browse, they shop, they leave. It is such a mundane and normal part of our lives that we never think twice about it. We assume we are safe. We assume everyone around us is just another normal person going about their day. But sometimes that assumption is deadly wrong. Retail workers see things that customers never notice. They deal with situations that most people cannot even imagine. And sometimes they find themselves face to face with people who are not there to shop. People who have much darker intentions. People who are waiting for the right moment when nobody is watching. And customers, well, they think they are safe too. Walking through brightly lit parking lots. Shopping in crowded stores. But predators know how to blend in. They know how to watch. They know how to wait. And they know exactly when to strike. The stories I am about to share with you come from retail workers and shoppers who experienced something that still haunts them to this day. Some of them quit their jobs immediately after what happened. Some of them moved to different cities. Some of them still check over their shoulders every time they go out at night. These are their stories. And I promise you, by the end, you will never look at a shopping mall the same way again. Let me start with a story from a young woman we will call Sarah. This happened when she was in her early 20s, working at a large popular clothing store. It was one of her first real jobs, and she had only been working there for a few weeks. Sarah usually worked in the back half of the store, organizing inventory, bringing out new products, making sure everything was stocked and neat. She was happy she did not have to work as a cashier. She was shy back then, and the thought of dealing with customers face to face all day made her nervous. One night, Sarah was working the closing shift. It was getting late, maybe an hour or two before the store closed. Things were really quiet. The store was nearly empty, which Sarah actually liked because it meant she could get more work done without constantly having to move around customers. As she was organizing clothes in her section, she noticed a man walk in. He was looking around at the clothes, but not really in the way that shoppers normally do. He was not checking prices of sizes. He was just kind of scanning the area, looking around in general. Sarah did not stare at him, but he was in her line of vision as she worked. He stood there for at least 10 minutes, barely moving, not really looking at any specific items, just observing, watching. After a while, he turned and walked away. Sarah thought it was a little odd, but she pushed it out of her mind. Weird customers came in all the time. It was retail. You learn not to think too much about it. About 15 minutes later, Sarah went into the back room to get some inventory. Like most stores, they had a large back area filled with boxes, shelves, extra stock, all kinds of clutter. There were also a few doors that led outside, spaced out here and there along the back wall. Sarah was searching through some boxes when she heard something that made her freeze. Someone was knocking at one of the back doors. Not just knocking, banging. Hard, aggressive banging. Like they were trying to break through. This was really weird. That door was almost never used. It just led to a narrow back alley behind the store, a small access road that was only really used for deliveries. There was a different door farther down where deliveries actually came in. Nobody should be at this door, especially not at this hour. Sarah thought maybe it was a coworker who had gone outside for some reason and gotten locked out. Or maybe it was a delivery person at the wrong door. But both of those seemed unlikely. The banging continued, relentless and aggressive. Sarah walked toward the door, but something stopped her, a feeling in her gut that told her not to open it. She was still new to the job and did not know all the protocols. She decided to find a coworker first. She walked back out onto the sales floor and found one of the other employees. When Sarah told her about the banging, the coworker had no idea who it could be. They were not expecting any deliveries. She suggested they go outside through the front entrance and walk around to see who was there. They left through the front of the store and started walking around the building. The back area was just a narrow alley, poorly lit, with a concrete wall on one side going up to another store above. It was quiet back there. Too quiet. As they got closer, Sarah could still hear the banging. When they finally reached the corner and looked around the edge of the building, they saw a dark SUV parked near the back door. And then they saw a man. He was at the door, banging on it, trying to get in. The moment he saw Sarah and her co-worker, he stopped. For a split second, they all just stared at each other. Then the man ran. He sprinted to the SUV, jumped inside, and the vehicle peeled out, speeding away down the alley and disappearing into the night. Sarah and her co-worker stood there in shock. They quickly went back inside and reported it to their manager. Sarah did not get a great look at the man, but she was pretty sure it was the same guy who had been standing in the store earlier, just watching, just waiting. Sarah went home shortly after that. She never heard anything more about the incident, but looking back now, she knows exactly what that man was planning. He was casing the store, watching to see when it would be quiet, when there would be fewer employees, and then he tried to get in through the back door where nobody would see him enter. If Sarah had opened that door, if she had been alone back there with no co-worker nearby, who knows what would have happened. That decision to find help first might have saved her life. This next story takes place almost 30 years ago, but the woman who experienced it still remembers every detail like it happened yesterday. We will call her Margaret. Margaret lived in a city with a popular shopping area filled with stores and restaurants. She did about 90% of her shopping there because it was convenient and had everything she needed. On this particular night, she went to a large department store late in the evening. She spent over an hour inside, browsing, trying things on, taking her time. By the time she left, it was nearly closing time. The parking lot, which had been full when she arrived, was now almost completely empty. Margaret had parked far from the store because the lot had been crowded earlier. She walked to her car, loaded her bags into the trunk, and got inside. Before starting the engine, she looked around the parking lot out of habit. That is when she saw him, a man, walking across the empty parking lot. She had no idea where he had come from. It was like he had emerged from nowhere. The massive parking lot was empty, except for this one man, walking slowly, deliberately. He was about 100 feet in front of her car, and then he stopped. He turned and faced her directly, just stood there, staring. Margaret could see him clearly. He had long hair, a moustache, average clothes. Nothing particularly memorable, except for the fact that he was just standing there in the middle of an empty parking lot, staring directly at her car. For some reason, Margaret did not drive away. She was curious, maybe a little confused. She thought maybe he was waiting for someone or lost. But he did not wave. He did not move. He just stared. This went on for a full minute. The man standing perfectly still, facing her car, not moving, not blinking, just watching. Finally, Margaret got creeped out enough that she started her car and drove away. She went home and forgot about it. Life moved on. But about a week or two later, Margaret was shopping at that same store again. She was checking out, standing in line at the registers, when she noticed one of the cashiers. She recognized him immediately. It was the same man from the parking lot, the one who had been staring at her. He worked at the store. Margaret felt her stomach drop. This made it so much worse. Why had he been standing in the parking lot, out of uniform, just staring at her? If he worked there, why had he not been inside? Why had he been watching her? Thankfully, she was not in his line. She checked out with a different cashier and left as quickly as possible. But the incident stayed with her, gnawing at the back of her mind. About a month later, Margaret was talking with one of her neighbors and discovered that the neighbor worked part-time at that same store. When Margaret asked if she knew the man and described him, the neighbor knew exactly who she was talking about. He was creepy, the neighbor said. He had been fired from the store. He had been weird to other employees and had tried to follow someone home once. Margaret felt vindicated but also terrified. That man had been standing in the parking lot, watching her, knowing where she shopped, possibly knowing her routine. Had he been planning to follow her home that night? Had something interrupted him? Had she been targeted, or was it just random? She never got answers to those questions. But she stopped shopping at that store after dark, and she never forgot the feeling of being watched by someone who had no reason to be watching. Let me tell you about David. David worked at a shoe store in a very large, popular mall. The mall had hundreds of stores and got countless shoppers every year, especially during the holidays. The weekends leading up to Christmas were absolute chaos. David's store was fairly popular and not very large, so when the mall was crowded, they sometimes had to limit how many people could enter at once. On this particular weekend last year, David was working with 4 other co-workers, which was way more than usual. It was one of the busiest days of the year. The store was absolutely packed with people looking at shoes, trying them on, asking questions. All 5 employees were constantly busy, running around helping customers, restocking, ringing up purchases. At one point, a man came up to David and asked if they had a specific shoe in a certain size. David knew they had some at the start of the day and told the man yes. The guy seemed frustrated already, complaining that he could not find what he wanted on the sales floor. David went into the back room to get the shoe, but when he checked, they were all gone. They had sold out earlier in the day, and David had not known. He went back out and told the customer that they had actually just sold out. The man exploded. He started cursing at David, calling him a liar, saying he was incompetent. David apologized and offered to give him the names of other stores that might have the shoe. The man refused and kept yelling. The store was still packed with customers, and people were starting to notice the commotion. Another customer nearby stepped between David and the angry man, trying to calm things down. The angry man seemed to back off a little, but then he looked David directly in the eyes and said something that made David's blood run cold. He said, "I will be back, and I will get you." Then he turned and left the store. David thought it was just an empty threat from an angry customer. He went back to work. The store stayed extremely busy for hours. By 6 p.m., things finally started to calm down. They closed at 8 p.m., and the last 2 hours were much quieter. By 7:30, most of the employees had left. Only David and 2 others remained to close the store. At 8 p.m., the other 2 left, and David stayed to finish the closing tasks. It was his turn to be the last one out. He would only be there another 15 minutes or so. As David was finishing up, he looked out the front window of the store and froze. The same man from earlier was standing in the hallway of the mall, staring directly at him. The store was closed now. The doors were locked. The mall was closed too. Everyone was supposed to leave, but there were still a few people lingering in the hallways, and this man was just standing there, outside the locked store, staring. David felt panic rising in his chest. The man had said he would be back, and now he was. And David was alone. The man could not get into the store, but David had to leave eventually. What was this guy planning to do? Was he going to wait for David to come out? Was he going to follow him to his car? David stayed inside and moved to the back of the store, out of the man's sight. He finished his closing tasks slowly, stalling for time. When he finally had to leave, he looked out the front window again. The man was still there. David did not leave. He went back into the stockroom and waited. A minute later, he checked again. Still there. His heart was pounding. Then David saw a security guard approach the man and tell him he had to leave. The man argued for a moment, but the security guard was insistent. Finally, the man walked away, escorted by the guard toward the mall exits. David waited another couple of minutes, then finally left the store and started walking through the now empty mall. He headed toward the parking garage where he always parked. The garage was almost empty now, just a few scattered cars here and there. David walked quickly toward his vehicle, keys in hand, ready to jump in and drive away as fast as possible. Then he heard a voice behind him. He turned and saw the same man standing in the parking garage about 50 feet away. David has no idea how the man knew he would be there, or if it was just a horrible coincidence. But there he was, and he started walking toward David, anger clear on his face. David did not wait. He turned and ran as fast as he could toward his car. He sprinted, fumbling with his keys, reaching his vehicle just in time. He jumped inside, locked the doors, started the engine, and floored it out of there. The man did not reach him. David left him standing in the parking garage and drove straight home, checking his mirrors the entire way to make sure he was not being followed. David never saw that man again, at least not at work. But he was paranoid for weeks, always looking over his shoulder, always worried the man would show up again. All of this over a shoe, over an honest mistake. Some people have anger problems that go way deeper than anyone realizes, and sometimes retail workers become the targets of that rage. This story comes from a young woman we will call Emily. She was in her mid-20s at the time, though she often got mistaken for being much younger. She lived in an apartment building less than a mile from a shopping area, with grocery stores, restaurants, and other shops. Because it was so close, Emily would sometimes walk instead of driving. There were sidewalks the whole way, and it only took about 5 to 10 minutes. On this particular night, she decided to walk to the grocery store around 9 p.m. The walk there was uneventful. The store was quiet, and Emily did not need much, just a few items. She was not planning to get a lot because she did not want to carry heavy bags home on foot. She checked out and started walking back through the parking lot. As she was almost out of the lot, heading toward the sidewalk, she saw a car driving slowly through the parking spaces. At first, she thought it was just someone leaving. But then the car slowed down even more and started driving toward her. The car stopped right in her path. Emily had to walk past it to get to the sidewalk. She kept walking, trying not to make eye contact. But as she got close, the driver's window rolled down. There was a man behind the wheel. He looked at Emily and said, "Hi." Emily said hi back, polite but cautious. Then the man asked if she needed a ride. Emily smiled and said, "No thanks, she was fine." The man persisted. He said he had seen her walk to the store and it was cold outside. Would she like a ride home? This immediately set off alarm bells in Emily's head. How did he know she had walked there? She had never seen this man before in her life. She told him again that she was fine, that it was not a long walk. She started to move away, but then the man asked something that made her stop. He asked if she lived in her specific apartment complex. He named it by name. Emily froze. How did he know where she lived? She made the mistake of saying yes. Then she asked if he lived there too, thinking that might explain it. The man said no, he did not live there. Emily told him to have a good night and started walking away quickly. The man called after her, asking one more time if she was sure she did not need a ride. Emily said yes, she was sure, and kept walking. She watched the car leave the parking lot and pull onto the street. As Emily walked on the sidewalk, the car passed her. She felt relieved that he was going away. But then, about 10 minutes later, when Emily arrived at her apartment complex, she saw a car sitting in the parking lot with the engine running. It was the same car, the same man. He had told her he did not live there. So what was he doing in her parking lot? Waiting. Emily did not hesitate. She started running for the front door of her building. Behind her, she heard the car door open. She did not look back. She just ran. She heard footsteps behind her. Someone was following her. She did not hear anyone call out, but the footsteps were getting closer. Emily reached the door, fumbled with her key, got it open, and ran inside. She went through the lobby and up the stairs to her floor as fast as she could. The man did not make it inside the building. Emily never saw him again. But she thinks about what could have happened if she had accepted that ride. Where would he have taken her? What was he planning? And how did he know where she lived? She never walked to that store alone at night again. Let me tell you about one final story. This one comes from a man named Marcus, who used to work as a security guard at a mall years ago. He often worked overnight shifts, which were honestly pretty easy most of the time. His job was to walk around the mall every couple of hours, make sure everything was secure, and spend the rest of the time in a small office monitoring security cameras. Most of the mall lights would be off overnight, and he would be completely alone in this huge, empty space. It was eerie sometimes, being the only person in a massive mall in the middle of the night. But Marcus got used to it. The cameras did not cover 100% of the mall, but they covered most of it. During business hours, there would be multiple guards, but overnight, they only needed one. Marcus had been working there for about 6 months. And the craziest thing that had ever happened was finding an unauthorized car parked in the lot overnight. That was it. Nothing exciting ever happened. Until one night. It was around 11 p.m., only a few hours into his shift. Marcus got up to make his rounds. He started walking through the mall hallways, checking doors, looking around. When he turned one corner, he saw 2 or 3 guys approaching one of the entrance doors from outside. Marcus had never seen anything like this before. He assumed they were people who did not know the mall was closed, even though it was 11 at night and there were no cars in the parking lot. He heard them try to open the doors. Even though he did not want to, he continued walking toward them. As he got closer, he could see there were at least 3 guys, maybe 4. When they saw Marcus, they quickly turned and started running away. Marcus found this suspicious. If they were just checking if the mall was open, why would they run? He walked to the doors and looked outside. The guys were gone. He did not see a car either. He had no idea where they had come from. Marcus continued his rounds, walking to another hallway. For the next few minutes, everything seemed fine. But then, from the other end of the mall, he heard the sound of glass breaking. Someone had broken in. Marcus immediately took out his phone and called 911 to report the break-in. Then, even though he did not want to, he started walking toward the sound to investigate. As he got closer, he heard multiple men's voices talking to each other. He could not make out what they were saying, but it was definitely the same guys he had seen earlier. Marcus stopped. He did not want to confront them. He was not a real cop. He did not have a gun. He could not arrest anyone. His job was just to observe and report. He turned around to go back, but one of the men yelled out. He knew Marcus was there. He told Marcus to show himself. Marcus did not want to. Instead, he ran to a nearby hallway and found a back area marked Employees Only. He ducked into a storage closet and hid. He could hear footsteps. The men were looking for him. Marcus tried to be as quiet as possible, barely breathing. He heard someone walk right past the closet. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought they would hear it. Eventually, the footsteps faded away. Marcus stayed hidden. He did not move. About 10 minutes later, he heard different footsteps. These were the police. Marcus came out of his hiding place and met the officers. They found the men on the other side of the mall and arrested them. They had broken into one of the stores and were in the process of robbing it. After that night, Marcus quit. He did not want to deal with something like that again. It was one of the scariest experiences of his life, and no overnight security job was worth risking his life over. These stories are real. They happen to real people, in real stores and real malls, places we all go, places we think are safe. Retail workers deal with more than rude customers and long shifts. They sometimes deal with predators, criminals, and people with truly dangerous intentions. And shoppers are not always safe either. Parking lots, especially at night, can be hunting grounds for those who know how to watch and wait. The next time you go shopping, pay attention to your surroundings. Notice who is watching. Notice who seems out of place. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you work in retail, never open doors you should not open. Never go into back alleys alone. Never ignore warning signs. Your safety is more important than any job. These people survived their encounters. but not everyone does. Stay alert, stay safe, and remember that danger does not always look dangerous until it is too late. This is American Gothic, reminding you that the scariest moments happen in the most ordinary places. Stay vigilant. But before we end, there is one more story I need to share with you. This one is different from the others because it does not involve a customer or a stranger. It involves something much harder to explain. Something that made a man question his own sanity. This story comes from someone we will call Robert. About 5 years ago, Robert worked as an overnight stocker at a large retail chain. His shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. His job was to unload trucks, stock shelves, organize the back room, and get the store ready for the next day. Usually, there would be 3 or 4 people working the overnight shift with him, but on this particular night, everyone else had called out sick or had emergencies. It was just Robert, alone, in a massive store, for 8 hours. The manager asked if he was okay working by himself. Robert said yes. He had done it before for short periods. How bad could it be? He would just focus on the most important tasks and do what he could. The store closed at 9 p.m., and by the time Robert arrived at 10, the place was completely empty and locked up. He entered through the employee entrance in the back, clocked in, and got to work. For the first hour, everything was normal. Robert put on some music on his phone, started unloading boxes from the delivery truck, and began stocking shelves. The store was quiet except for the music and the sound of him moving around. Around 11:30, Robert went to the back stockroom to get more inventory. The stockroom was massive, filled with tall metal shelves stacked with boxes, narrow aisles, and dim lighting. It always felt a little creepy back there, but Robert was used to it. He was searching for a specific item when he heard something that made him stop. Footsteps. Clear, distinct footsteps coming from somewhere else in the stockroom. Robert turned off his music and listened. The footsteps continued. Slow, deliberate, walking down one of the aisles. But Robert was supposed to be alone. Nobody else was scheduled to work tonight. The doors were locked. Robert called out, asking if anyone was there. The footsteps stopped immediately. Complete silence. Robert waited, listening carefully. Nothing. He convinced himself it was just the building settling, or maybe some boxes shifting on the shelves. Old buildings made weird noises all the time. He turned his music back on and went back to work. About 20 minutes later, Robert was on the sales floor, stocking shelves near the front of the store. As he was placing items on a shelf, he glanced toward the back of the store and saw something that made his heart stop. There was someone standing at the end of the aisle, a figure just standing there in the shadows, completely still, facing in his direction. Robert froze. He stared at the figure, trying to make out details, but the lighting was dim and he could not see clearly. He called out again, asking who was there. The figure did not move, did not respond, just stood there. Robert felt panic rising. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it down the aisle toward the figure. The light illuminated the entire aisle. There was nobody there. The aisle was empty. Robert stood there for a long moment, his heart pounding. He had clearly seen someone standing there. He was not imagining it, but now they were gone. Or maybe they had never been there at all. He tried to calm himself down. He was tired. It was late. His eyes were playing tricks on him in the dim lighting. That had to be it. Robert went back to work, but now he was on edge. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow seemed suspicious. He kept checking over his shoulder, expecting to see someone behind him. Around 2 a.m., Robert needed to go back to the stockroom again. He really did not want to, but he needed certain items to finish his tasks. He walked back there, turned on all the lights he could find, and moved quickly through the aisles. As he was searching for what he needed, he heard it again. Footsteps, but this time they were closer, much closer. They sounded like they were in the very next aisle over, just on the other side of the shelves. Robert stopped moving. The footsteps stopped too. He held his breath, listening. Then, slowly, he walked to the end of the aisle and looked around the corner into the next aisle. Empty. Nobody there. But as Robert stood there staring down the empty aisle, something caught his eye. On the floor, right where someone would have been standing if they had been there, was a single wet footprint. Just one. Leading from nowhere and going nowhere. Robert did not touch it. He did not investigate further. He grabbed what he needed and got out of that stockroom as fast as he could. He went back to the sales floor and did not return to the stockroom for the rest of his shift. At 6 a.m., when his shift ended, Robert clocked out and left immediately. He sat in his car for a few minutes, trying to process what had happened. He considered telling his manager, but what would he say? That he saw a figure that disappeared? That he heard footsteps when nobody was there? That there was a mysterious wet footprint in the stockroom? They would think he was crazy. Or that he was making excuses because he did not want to work alone anymore. Robert went back to work the next night, but this time there were other people on the shift with him. He asked them if they had ever experienced anything weird working overnight. One of them, an older guy who had been there for years, gave Robert a strange look. He asked Robert if he had seen the man in the stockroom. Robert felt chills run down his spine. He asked what the co-worker meant. The older guy said that several people over the years had reported seeing someone in the stockroom on overnight shifts. Always when they were alone, or when there were very few people working. A figure that would appear and then vanish. Footsteps with no source. Items moving on their own. Some people thought the store was haunted. Others thought it was just exhaustion and stress, playing tricks on tired minds. But enough people had experienced something that it had become an unofficial legend among the overnight workers. Robert never worked alone again. He always made sure at least one other person was scheduled with him, and he avoided the stockroom as much as possible, especially late at night. To this day, he does not know what he saw or heard that night, but he knows that he was not imagining it. Something was in that store with him, and whatever it was, it did not want to be seen. Now that you have heard these stories, I want to talk about something that does not get discussed enough. The unique vulnerabilities that exist in retail environments and why they make such perfect hunting grounds for predators. Think about it from a predator's perspective. Retail stores and malls offer everything they need. High foot traffic means lots of potential victims. Multiple entrances and exits provide escape routes. Large parking lots offer isolation, especially at night. And the predictable routines of both workers and customers make it easy to identify targets and plan attacks. Retail workers are especially vulnerable for several reasons. First, many of them are young, often teenagers or people in their early 20s working their first jobs. They lack experience and may not recognize warning signs that someone with more life experience would catch immediately. Second, retail workers are trained to be helpful and accommodating. They are taught that the customer is always right, that they should be friendly and approachable. This conditioning can override their natural instincts to be cautious or suspicious. Third, retail workers often work alone or in small groups, especially during opening and closing shifts. They are responsible for tasks that require them to be in isolated areas like stockrooms, back alleys, and parking garages. These are exactly the kinds of places where attacks are most likely to happen, and for customers, the dangers are different but equally real. Parking lots are notoriously dangerous, especially in the evening and at night. They are large, poorly lit, and often have blind spots where someone can hide or approach unseen. People are distracted when they are loading purchases into their cars or searching for their keys. They are vulnerable. Predators know this. They study behaviors. They watch for people who seem distracted or alone. They note patterns, like someone who shops at the same time every week or always parks in the same area. They identify vulnerabilities and wait for the right moment to strike. So let me give you some warning signs that everyone should know, but that nobody really talks about. These are red flags that could save your life. Warning sign number 1. Someone who appears multiple times in different locations without a clear reason. Like the man in Sarah's story who was in the store, then at the back door, then in an SUV. If you see the same person in multiple places within a short period of time, especially if they seem to be following a pattern that tracks with your movements, that is a massive red flag. Warning sign number 2. Someone who asks questions they should not know the answer to. Like the man who asked Emily if she lived at a specific apartment complex when she had never told him. How did he know? Because he had been watching her. He had followed her before. Those kinds of questions reveal that someone has been gathering information about you. Warning sign number 3. Someone who does not leave when they should. Like the angry customer who came back to the mall hours later and waited in the parking garage. Normal people do not do that. Normal people do not invest that much time and energy into confronting a retail worker over a minor issue. That level of obsession indicates something much darker. Warning sign number 4. Someone who tries to isolate you. This can be subtle, asking you to come to a back door instead of the front, suggesting you get in their car for a ride, waiting until you are alone to approach you. Predators do not want witnesses. They want you alone where nobody can intervene. Warning sign number 5. Someone who does not react normally when caught or confronted. Like the men who ran when they saw the security guard, or the man who sped away when Sarah and her co-worker came around the corner. Second, if you're working a closing shift, try to leave with other employees. There is safety in numbers. If you absolutely must leave alone, have your keys ready before you walk out the door. Do not stand in a dark parking lot searching through your bag. Third, if someone makes you uncomfortable, tell a manager or coworker immediately. Do not worry about seeming paranoid or causing drama. Your safety is more important than being polite. Fourth, learn where all the exits are and where the cameras have blind spots. If something bad happens, you need to know the fastest escape route and the safest places to hide or run. Fifth, trust your gut about customers who seem off. If someone is browsing but not really shopping, if they are watching you more than the merchandise, if they are asking strange questions, alert security or management. It is better to be wrong than to ignore a real threat. Sixth, never count money or make bank deposits alone, especially at night. This is when robberies most often occur. Always have a partner or ask for a security escort. Seventh, if you have to work in a stockroom or back area alone, keep your phone with you and tell someone where you are going. Check in periodically. If you do not check in, someone should come looking for you. Eighth, know your company's policies on dealing with aggressive or threatening customers. You have the right to refuse service to someone who is harassing or threatening you. You have the right to call the police if you feel unsafe. Your employer might not always support you, but your safety comes first. If you are a shopper, especially someone who shops alone, here is what you need to know to stay safer. First, be aware of your surroundings from the moment you park your car. Do not walk through a parking lot with headphones on, staring at your phone. Keep your head up and pay attention to who is around you. Second, park in well-lit areas close to the store entrance, even if it means walking a bit further. The convenience of a closed spot is not worth the increased risk of being in a dark, isolated area. Third, if someone approaches you in a parking lot offering help or asking questions, be cautious. It is okay to say no thanks and keep walking. You do not owe strangers conversation or assistance, especially if you are alone. Fourth, if you feel like someone is following you in a store, go to the customer service desk or find a security guard. Do not leave the store alone. Ask for an escort to your car. Fifth, if someone follows you to your car, do not get in. Walk past your car and go back into the store. Get help. Call the police if necessary. Do not lead someone who is following you to your home. Sixth, trust your instincts about offers of help. If someone offers you a ride and it feels wrong, say no. If someone asks if you need help loading your car and something feels off, decline. Legitimate, helpful people will not be offended. Predators will often push or become upset when rejected. Seventh, if you shop regularly at the same stores at the same times, vary your routine occasionally. Predictability makes you a target. Going to the same grocery store every Tuesday at 7 p.m. means anyone watching you knows exactly when and where you will be. 8. Keep your car doors locked while you are loading purchases. If someone approaches while you are putting bags in your trunk, you can get into your car and lock the doors immediately. Let me share some statistics that might surprise you. According to the National Retail Federation, retailers lose billions of dollars each year to crime. But what is less talked about is the human cost. Retail workers are assaulted, threatened, stalked, and harassed at alarming rates. Many are injured or killed during robberies. Some are targeted by customers who become obsessed with them. Others are followed home or stalked online. And shoppers face dangers too. Parking lot crimes are among the most common types of attacks. Purse snatchings, carjackings, assaults, abductions, they all frequently happen in retail parking lots, because that is where victims are most vulnerable. The sad truth is that retail environments are designed for commerce, not security. Wide open spaces, multiple entrances, easy access for everyone. These things are good for business, but bad for safety. And companies often prioritize profit over protection, understaffing stores and cutting security budgets. This is why individual awareness and caution are so important. You cannot rely on stores or malls to keep you safe. You have to take responsibility for your own security. While the stories I shared earlier were from everyday people, there have been many cases of retail-related crimes that made national news. Cases where workers were killed during robberies. Cases where customers were abducted from parking lots. Cases where stalkers targeted retail employees for months before attacking. I am not going to go into graphic detail about these cases, but I mention them to make a point. These things really happen. They are not just urban legends or rare occurrences. Retail crime is real, it is common, and it is often violent. The difference between the people in the stories I shared and the people in those headline cases is often just luck. being in the right place at the right time, making one decision instead of another, having a gut feeling and listening to it. Sarah could have opened that back door. Emily could have accepted that ride. David could have walked to his car without noticing the man waiting. Robert could have gone deeper into that stockroom. Any of these stories could have ended very differently. If you are a retail manager or business owner, please listen carefully. You have a responsibility to protect your employees. That means more than just meeting minimum legal requirements for security. It means scheduling enough people so nobody has to work alone in isolated areas. It means installing adequate lighting in parking lots and back areas. It means training employees on safety protocols and taking their concerns seriously when they report threatening customers or suspicious activity. It means not punishing employees who refuse to do something that makes them feel unsafe. It means providing panic buttons or direct lines to security. It means conducting background checks on employees who will be working with vulnerable populations. Most importantly, it means creating a culture where safety is valued over sales, where employees know they can speak up without being dismissed or retaliated against, where profit does not come at the cost of human lives. Too many retail workers have been hurt or killed because their employers did not take threats seriously or pressured them to ignore their instincts in favor of customer service. That has to change. The retail industry employs millions of people. Millions more shop at stores and malls every single day. The vast majority of these interactions are perfectly safe and normal. People buy their groceries, their clothes, their household items, and go home without incident. But some interactions are not normal. Some people walking through stores are not there to shop. Some people in parking lots are not looking for their cars. Some dangers are real, immediate, and deadly. The stories I have shared with you today are meant to educate, not terrify. They are meant to make you more aware, more prepared, more cautious, because awareness is the first line of defense against becoming a victim. If you work in retail, please take these stories seriously. Share them with your coworkers. Discuss safety protocols. Look out for each other. Your job is not worth your life, no matter what your employer might imply. If you shop regularly, please be aware of your surroundings. Pay attention to warning signs. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself and your loved ones. And if you have ever experienced something similar to these stories, know that you are not alone. Know that your fear was justified, and know that sharing your story might help someone else recognize danger before it is too late. Stay safe out there, whether you are stocking shelves at midnight, closing up a shop alone, or just running errands after dark. Remember that danger does not announce itself. It lurks, it watches, it waits. And sometimes, the only thing standing between you and disaster is your awareness, your instincts, and your willingness to act when something feels wrong. This is American Gothic, signing off with one final reminder. The monsters are not hiding under your bed. They are walking through the aisles, standing in parking lots, and waiting at back doors. Stay vigilant, stay aware, and never ignore that voice in your head that tells you to run. Good night, and stay safe.